Let's get it on then, shall we? Mwah. Welcome to Sex on the Peach, your weekly hump day dose of everyone's favourite untalked about topic, sex. Let's get honest, let's get open, let's get comfortable, and let's get in to this week's show. Happy Hump Day, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Sex on the Peach. This week's episode is truly a collaboration, not a performance, as I'm joined by my first guest, and it's none other than my very own best friend, Devika Joshi. Dev and I have had extremely different sexual journeys and experiences, and she has very bravely joined me today to talk about losing her virginity in her mid-20s and everything that came with that. As with all of my guests, whilst we have a topic of focus, the conversation goes where it goes. And in this episode, alongside virginity, we'll also be talking about sex drives, body image issues, and the importance of language in the sexual space, as well as answering some of your questions. Please bear with us with the sound in this week's episode because my mic was not playing game. So we had to use a backup audio recording and it won't be on par with some of the other episodes of Sex on the Peach, but I hope the content is enough to keep you going. The title of this week's episode is rooted in how women and vulva owners seem to be categorized in sexual terms as pure or dirty, as angelic or promiscuous, and how Dev and I's individual experiences have been forced into those categories in society's eyes. I hope that you enjoy our conversation today. So without further ado, here is the Virgin and the Sket. Dev, thank you so much for joining me today as my first guest.
I'm really
Sex
honored.
On the Peach.
I'm so honored because I know how important this is to you. So the fact that I'm on it at all, let alone your first guest, is pretty exciting.
No, I wouldn't have wanted anyone else. As we make our way through the conversations about sex, where better to start than at the very beginning and losing our virginity?
A sexual debut.
A sexual debut, which is becoming the favoured term, I think. So to kick things off, if you would mind, Dev, just letting people know the age at which you made your sexual debut.
Why, thank you. So I always said I was late to the game, which I'm not sure if that's even a nice thing to say, but I was 25. So I don't actually know what the average age is for people. I'm sure you have statistics somewhere. You're looking down. That means you definitely have.
I do. I love a statistic. The average age that women lose their virginity in the UK is 18. However, we have also found out that 1 in 8 26-year-olds are still virgins. So I think that's probably a slightly surprising statistic because we all think everyone's going out and losing their virginity as soon as they hit 16.
I was going to say, I think I was definitely the last of my group of friends that I grew up with in London by a long shot, not to out any of my friends, but that was definitely something that I was insecure about, that there was no one, I would even say in their 20s, that I could be like, hey, we're going through this together. It was just me and me navigating that kind of on my own. Yeah.
Did you feel, because we've been friends for a really long time and you were always so open about it and seemingly okay with it. And is that you weren't voicing that you felt alone in it? You know, did you feel alone and that you couldn't speak about it, or were you okay? How did you, I guess as well, the older people get, the more pressure they feel to lose it. So how did that feel?
Well, there's two things there. So I think the pressure thing is definitely one of them, because I think, like you're saying, the older you get, the more that I think you start to get concerned that you're doing something wrong or you're putting something out there that's wrong. And then people around you sort of go that guy might be cute, or that relationship or that date might be fine for a one-off thing. But if it's going to be the person that's going to take your virginity, it's such a big deal. And so there's a lot of that pressure that just keeps building and building. In terms of being insecure about it, I think as you get older, you're kind of looking around and watching everyone else else have these experiences that you're not. And I think for some people, it's a conscious choice, whether it's religious or personal for whatever reason. It wasn't for me. I wasn't kind of going, oh, I'm going to wait till a certain point. It just sort of happened. So I think it was more of like a exploratory and like, why isn't this happening for me? What cues am I missing out on? I think I remember feeling like everyone else was speaking a language that I just didn't understand, like phrases or experiences that like seemingly everyone's had. And
Yeah,
and that was just something that I was like, oh, okay, well, that's just I've never been in that situation. And so I always tried to say like, because people would say like, how are you at this age still a virgin? And I would say, well, there were maybe one situation in which something could have happened, but didn't. Like, that's not a huge number. That's one. Like, there was really not a lot of opportunity for that to happen for me. So I would have told you if I was freaking out or if I was like, oh my God, I have to lose this now. What's going on? But I think there was definitely like a little confusion around dating and guys because I'm straight. So things like that. But yeah. It was an interesting time.
I do think as well that it seems to be the assumption that if someone is losing their virginity or making their sexual debut at what society considers a later age, because really what does it matter? Yeah. But we're just taught we should be going out and having mad sex as soon as we turn 16, but no one's really teaching us how to do it. So sure. That's a problem for a start. Mm-hmm. But people then do assume that it's a religious thing, and Devika is half Indian, and I know that in the Indian culture sex is still very much a taboo subject. It's still considered an activity restricted to married couples. And so was that ever part of your upbringing or your attitude towards sex? Because so much of our attitudes, and I grew up in a very liberal household where my parents were very much, you go out and do what you want, you'll make your own mistakes and you'll figure it out. But a lot of people, everything they do is influenced by how they grew up and their cultural background and stuff. And I know that I might be completely wrong in even assuming that, and or even asking, but if that was even ever a part of anything in your upbringing.
No, definitely. I went to an international school, so I was surrounded by a lot of different cultures and expectations that come with that. Personally, yeah, I was saying, my dad is a very traditional Indian father. I still can't speak to him about that stuff. Like, I'm getting nervous now even thinking about it because that's just not the relationship that we have. There's just such a separation there, whether it's like a respect for elders thing or generally even with my kind of liberal friends, there's this thing of the parents or the dad is more supportive of like the son dating versus the girl. Like, they want to hear about the son. They don't want to hear about the daughter as much. And I could be like wildly paraphrasing everyone's experience here, but that was definitely my experience. My dad thought it was hilarious when my brother was dating. Never wanted to hear about me dating. Didn't even like bother learning my first boyfriend's name. Like, just wasn't. No, he always refers to like anyone as like your fellow or this person. Like, they're just not relevant. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that. I don't know whether or not that's just old school or if that comes from his culture. But I definitely knew that like you don't talk to dad about sex.
And when you lost your virginity, made your sexual debut at 25, obviously we refer to that as penetrative sex. So when that happened, had you experienced foreplay and all of the other things that we would refer to as before? Really, I like to think that everything is sex, because I'm sure anyone listening will know at this point that I identify as pansexual, and if I am having sex with a female or a fellow vulva owner, everything is sex. Sure. But for you, was it that everything sort of happened all in one go, or had there been a lead up?
No, so it was literally everything was all in one go. So it went from absolutely kind of no experiences to like all at once, just figuring it out with one person. And I mean, that was lovely for its own reasons, because I felt safe, and it was with a partner. So I had started dating someone, and then we ended up sleeping together within a relationship, which was hilarious to me. Cause I don't know if I'm not going to speak on behalf of like all men who sleep with women or their experiences, but there was something about that I remember seeing on TV of men going, oh, she was a virgin before we met, or like, she's been saving herself for me. And it was something that was like revered. I mean, my partner didn't care. He wasn't like, oh my God, you're a virgin and you haven't done anything. He was more like, oh, great. Like, we get to explore this together. So it was a really nice.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's really
it was
great.
And he wasn't freaked out. And he wasn't like, oh my God, like, I can't do this. It's too much pressure. It was like a very nice, for lack of a better term, rom-com experience for me. I know not everyone's is like that. And I'm not saying that like you have to wait to get that. That was just my experience.
How did you find having the conversation with your partner?
We were friends beforehand, so that conversation had actually come up prior to us dating. But when we discussed it closer to the time, it was a very sort of relaxed and open and like, I'm not going to pressure you. So I think we probably started dating in like the November of, I think it was 2019 or no, 2018. And then we didn't actually sleep together till like the end of December. So there was a whole period of time where I was like, you know this, you know that this is going to be my first time, but you're also not like, I'm used to having sex in relationships straight away or like with people I'm dating. Cause like we had gone on like 15 dates by that point and then like, and had done like pretty much, you know, nothing into it. Yeah. So I really just had that space to kind of go, okay, well today I'm ready, for lack of a better term.
And so you really did have an ideal partner.
It was a really like, I mean, I would just hope that if people wait for whatever reason and then like want to explore that, and it doesn't have to be like with someone that you're like in a relationship with. That's just how it worked out for me. I think if you're just with someone that you can communicate with and just explain like, this is where I'm coming from. And I also like, I felt the need to disclose that. I don't necessarily think you have to do that with a partner. If you're not comfortable, if that's not something that because in the same way, it's like, I'm telling you now something that I'm putting a lot of importance on. Whereas if it isn't that important, or you don't want to make it into a big deal, maybe you don't have to disclose it. I actually don't even know how I feel about this. I'm kind of working out like my feelings towards it's, you know, like when people talk about disclosing like a body count.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was just going to say it's whether it's 0 or 1,000, is it really anyone's business? I guess it's really whether you want to tell someone or not. For anyone listening, Dev and I are really on quite opposite ends of the scale in that respect, which is why the episode is called The Virgin and the Sket, because that is sort of the language that's reserved for women. You're virginal or you're a whore, you know. And we've also been brought up to believe that losing your virginity is a gift or that you are handing something over to someone, whereas really, as we all know, I'm going to say it every episode in one context or another, sex is a collaboration, not a performance. So it's two people invested in each other. It's not one person gifting something to someone. Yeah. It's two people in it who are consensually saying, I want to be here with you doing this right now, whether that's your first time, 100th time, 1000th time, millionth time. Does anyone get to 1,000,000 times?
I don't know.
Who knows?
It's a lot of work.
Maybe.
A lot of admin there.
And we're going to get into language a bit later on, but I just think there's all of that surrounding virginity for a woman. That whole belief that you are handing over a part of yourself to someone else. And so that person has to be special in some way. And obviously for some people, that is going to work out that way. I lost my virginity at 15 years old to a friend. And it was very much a mutual feeling of, let's just get it over with. I can't say, listen, I did not have a rom-com experience. We both got really, really drunk on what I believe was shots of Bacardi, which is just something I would never dream of doing now. And I can't remember a thing. I just know that it happened, but it was absolutely consensual. There's, you know, although I was very drunk and my memory is blurry, we both were in a place we were consenting to make that decision, to have that with each other. And so that happened and we've never spoken about it again. But we've remained, I mean, listen, we're still very good friends. We've always been really good friends. That will never change. We've spoken about everything in the world, but not once have we ever mentioned it to each other.
I didn't realize this. You've actually never talked about that since then.
Not once.
Do they remember it? Do you know if they remember?
Maybe it didn't happen. Because I was drunk. Can you imagine this whole time? I think that's my story. No, it did. No,
it happened.
But it wasn't who we were. That wasn't our relationship. Like we were very, very good friends. You know, we're best friends. It was very much let's get it out of the way. I don't know why I was desperate to get it out of the way at 15 years old. I'm not really a religious person, but the primary school I went to was a convent, which obviously, and I was taught by nuns. No disrespect to religion and anyone who is religious, that's fine. Yep. But it's a very restrictive environment because you're basically told that everything you're doing is wrong or not allowed. And it was a lovely school. I loved the school. So don't get me wrong, I loved it. But what was mad to me is at 10 years old, I was going into confession.
Did they teach you anything? I guess, or they just tell you abstinence is the key? Did they even touch sex ed?
We didn't know. We did not have sex ed. It was very much sex is for when you are married and for when you want to make a baby, if at all, because obviously a lot of people who are nuns and priests, they don't have sex. They believe themselves to be married to God, and that's fine. Obviously, there's no judgment here. Whatever people decide to do with their lives, that is fine. And then when I left that school, and then I went to another all-girls school, and obviously the convent was all girls. So I don't know if that had something to do with all of it, because for the longest time I'd been around only girls, and then I saw a guy and I was like, great. It's hard to say because now I'm of an age I can barely even remember that time, but I sometimes wonder if that was what sort of pushed me into being very sexual very young. It's hard to look back now, being so much older, and know the effect that our upbringing had on things like that. Because I did, on one hand, come from such a liberal household who are very much like, you'll do what you do in your own time, with the complete opposition of being in a very restrictive school environment and being told anything you do that might be wrong, you'll go to hell because you mustn't sin because Jesus.
A very condensed version of the teachings. because Jesus. Just no follow through. Just Jesus.
But they're very opposing environments to be a part of. And then I wonder if that had something to do with the fact that I then felt very urged on to be very sexual.
Do you think
very
it's like
quickly?
Part of it was like also discovering your identity through that? Because I think that these things are so linked to, like, you know, because I think I kind of figured out pretty early on that I was tactile, but I wasn't necessarily driven by kind of, I guess, like I was saying, like not a high sex drive, but just like sexual impulses, or like this language I was saying that I felt like everyone else was speaking. That wasn't motivating me. But I was like, oh, but I like having like really intense, close male relationships, or I like, you know, holding hands, or I like being really affectionate, or like being someone's best friend, but just that's it, like a platonic love. So that was a totally different upbringing to yours, where I was like surrounded by a lot of guys, never anything sexual. Like my mom used to joke, like, how do you guys always go out and get drunk and like no one ever hooks up? And I was just like, that just was never the experience.
It's not the dynamic.
It's not the dynamic that any of us had with each other ever. And like we would pass out in beds together. It'd be like, you know, it was just never, that was never on the cards.
Do you feel like you used to, as we would say, friend zone yourself out of, not fear, maybe that's not the right term to use, but I think as we say, like the older you get, the more pressure you feel. But then was there a side of that sort of, you did always keep everyone a very close friend, very much friend zoning everyone, so you didn't sort of have to worry about crossing that boundary?
I mean, there was definitely like a protective element to it where I would feel like I could hide behind it. So I was like, if everyone in this room knows that I'm a virgin, then I'm now giving myself permission to act how I want to act. So if I want to be like a bit flirtatious, not even flirtatious, like I'm trying to steal your man, but if I want to be like tactile and like touch someone's arm, or if I want to like engage with them just because that's what comes naturally to me, I've now given myself that free pass, and I won't be able to get any kind of judgment back from anyone because I've been like, well, Dev's the virgin, so she's not going to do anything wrong. And I used to live in town, and people would come and stay the night, like people that were working in shows would just come and crash because it was central. And I remember being like, someone had mentioned to me, it's really inappropriate that this guy who's married is like crashing in your apartment. And I was like, but I'm a virgin, so it's fine. Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of just like gave me the free pass of like, well, I can act how I want. I can have like, I wouldn't say inappropriate, but like really intensely close relationships with people. And it gives me that allowance. So that was definitely something that, I would invoke.
You felt it removed any level of threat to any partner?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. How did you find that people would generally react the older you got, still being a virgin? Because I think, obviously, we're going to get into the questions at the very end, but I think that seems to be the sort of general feeling, is that people get more and more nervous to divulge that information the older they get, because they worry about being judged. And I think, I mean, really, that's what a lot of this conversation is about, the fact that society tells us we should be having sex from 16. And so then when people aren't doing that, when they're sort of getting into their 20s and that maybe still hasn't happened for them, I think one of the main issues that people really face is that fear of being judged. And I think it will really help anyone listening who is in that situation to hear the real story of how that was for you, in terms of, did you, or was it a mixed bag? I'm sure a lot of people were like, cool. And maybe some people were like, what?
Yeah, it's really tricky for me to discuss this without going into the fact that I was bigger, in a bigger body at my, like, let's say in my earlier 20s versus, so like my mid 20s. And that kind of had a profound impact on whether or not I was disclosing that I was a virgin, because I feel like when I was bigger, I was almost ashamed of it. And I was like, there were no kind of positive influences around me or on TV or anything of like bigger women with like healthy, happy sex lives on shows or in the media, or even in my friend group, or like looking around at the people that I knew. I probably only knew like one woman who was kind of out there living her life and, you know, dating and having a happy, fulfilled relationship and those experiences. And no one else was. So after I had like lost a significant amount of weight, I then enjoyed telling people I was a virgin a bit more, because I enjoyed the reaction, which kind of was a little perverse. Because people would look at me and then go, oh my God, but like, why, you're so pretty. And I was like, oh, that was the attention I wasn't getting before. So it was.
So you thought that people would think you were a virgin because you
like
were
I deserved
bigger.
to be. Yeah, I really felt that, because I would, and through no fault of their own, but I would go out with a lot of my different shaped female friends, and I didn't compare us, but I would feel that attention from people. And I told you about this. I had a dating app where the guy said, it was a picture of you, me, and Zoe, our friend. And the guy was like, you shouldn't post pictures of you and your female friends because it invites comparison. And I was like, oh my God, like that's how people see me. They see me as like, in this group, I'm like the bigger girl. And so it's my fault. I'm being told basically I deserve to be alone, right? Which was like a horrible thing to say to anyone. So I like, this guy was a horrible person. But
yeah, it sounds very much like a him problem.
Yeah, but I didn't know that. And I was new to this, and that was probably like my second experience on Bumble, I think it was, or Tinder at the time. So that was not fun. Judgment wise, there were also people that, you know, I was interested in who were like immediately put off by it. So they would be like, I like you, but I'm not gonna like take this any further because I don't want to be your first, because it's too much pressure for them. And so I was like, okay, so what? So you liked me. So actually me disclosing this to you has now put an unnecessary level of pressure on it for you. Even though I'm saying I'm okay with it and like I'm consenting to it, I'm fine to like see where this goes. You are now like, I'm going to respectfully take myself out of this because that's too much for me. And I was like, all right, I mean, fair enough. That's kind of, you know, one of the options you get when you're choosing to disclose this to someone. So part of me was like, what if I hadn't said anything? Maybe the story would be different. You know, if it's not so, yeah.
No, go on, you finish, sorry.
No, for me, it was very like closely linked to my sense of self, like worth and my identity. So I feel like I projected that forward. There might be someone with my exact experiences who decides to not go around shouting it from the rooftops, and they might have a totally different experience.
Mm-hmm. As I've said millions of times, this podcast is going to be inclusive. I don't want it to be anti-men at all, because I want men to be able to listen to it. I want them to gain knowledge and hear people's experiences from it. And I try not to blame, because I think a lot of these things come from what we've all grown up hearing and seeing and listening to and watching and being taught. And so to hear that feels very much to me like that's a male ego thing, you know, and it's putting it onto you, which it's just classic projection, which we all do in some way or another at some point in our lives. But that for me screams of the pressure of not being good enough for someone's first time, or, you know, not living up to what they think someone might be expecting. I know, but I think in the same way that we have that sort of, we're taught that we have this gift to give someone, or this flower. I think that especially if you are a man or a penis owner and you aren't a virgin, you then from the other side of society and the nonsense that they teach us have that pressure of feeling like you have to rock that person's absolute world so that they'll walk away thinking sex is good. Because on your first time, if they feel like they haven't done that, then you risk that person walking away going, well, I don't want to do that again because
that's it.
What? Because why would I want to do that again? Because that wasn't good. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So although I don't think that was a great thing to say to you or to say to someone who is still a virgin, I don't really agree with that being said, but I can understand
where that came from.
the male ego can be so fragile because of what we and they have been taught.
Exactly.
That I can understand that path of thinking of,
oh yeah,
that is a lot of pressure to put on me, because essentially I am setting up, especially because when we're 15, 16, 17, I had sex at 15 and then I was off. I didn't have sex once ago, oh, what was that? And then not have sex again until I was 18. Like, I was off. Like, I was like, cool, I'm on the train, I'm not getting off, you know, and then that was me.
So wait, question. So like the men that you slept with, like in your kind of like, let's say late teens, early 20s, were any of them virgins, and did they tell you?
So my first boyfriend, who was when I was 17, he was a virgin. So at that point, I'd already slept with a few people. But I didn't feel like there was pressure. I wanted him to have a good time. But this is sort of what I was going to say is, when you're that age, you don't know your own body. You don't know any of that stuff anyway. So even though I was off just having sex constantly, I don't think I started having sex that really started to work for me until I was about 21. Okay. So I think that when you are in your 20s, moving maybe even into your later 20s, even into your 30s, if someone meets you and you are a virgin, they're going to know that at that point you know more about sex than you do when you're a teenager.
Yes.
You just know because your friends have had sex, they've told you that they've had sex, they've told you that they've been with someone who doesn't know where the clitoris is, they've told you, you know, you've got all this information, you're surrounded by, you've probably watched porn. So then going to know that you're coming from a place of having a lot, like 10 years more information than someone who might be losing their virginity at 16. So there's that added pressure of knowing, I'm really setting up this person's sexual journey.
I am the overture to their sexual debut.
well, absolutely. So although I think that's a shame that those people felt like that, I can understand why, especially from that toxic masculinity, ego, societal nonsense point of view, people may feel like that.
Right.
It took me a really long time to get round to make that point.
But further to like what you're saying is I don't know what it must feel like to be, you know, a man or a penis owner in today's society. And that judgment, because I know that there are guys out there who are like hetero men who go, oh, you know, I haven't slept with like this many women, I get made fun of. I've slept with like 2 and I'm, you know, 30. And there's that stigma around that, or even just virginity. Like, you know, I'm sure that like my experience was my experience, but someone in my situation, if they were male, God, I can't even imagine what that must be like.
No, you're right.
In terms of judgment, in terms of like how, you know, do they want to disclose it? Do they want to, and I'm talking about like hetero relationships here, just because that's the only thing I think I can speak to authentically. But I'm trying to imagine someone in that similar situation, like let's say in their mid-20s going, oh, it just hasn't happened for me. Like, I think my knee-jerk reaction would be like, oh, like if someone hasn't even been in a relationship at this stage, people tend to say it's your fault. Like, you've done something wrong. You're almost 30, you're whatever age, and you haven't had a relationship. Like, you're doing something. So I think like that would be my knee-jerk reaction, that I have to look at that and go, no, that's not anyone's fault, or that's just how life's worked out for them, right?
Because I think women who are virgins, they get looked at as pure, and it's like this really lovely, sweet thing. But if you are a man or a penis owner, it would be like, what's wrong with you?
Yep.
Which is completely unfair. And I want to make it clear at this point to anyone listening, whatever age you are, whatever gender, whatever sexuality, however many people you have slept with, it's fine. As long as everything that everyone is doing is consensual and there's a level of respect there, it's fine. Whether you want to disclose it or not, you're in a safe space because there's no judgment here. You could be a 42-year-old man who hasn't lost their virginity and fine, cool. Do you want to? Is that something you want to talk about? Or are you still not interested in doing that?
And I think there's a really good distinction there between, is it something you want to do or you're being made to feel like you have to? Because I definitely don't even think it crossed my radar until I was in my early 20s. I don't think I thought about sex at all until that. Because it just never, like, I didn't even go on a date properly. So that just wasn't on my radar. But then, you know, you start to get older, you get that pressure from your friends. I mean, even my mom was like, are you planning on losing your virginity anytime soon?
Really?
Actually, I think what she said was pop your cherry. And I was like really mortified. And I was like, okay, we're just not going to speak for like a while, because that was the most mortifying thing I've ever heard. No, because it's just, I think she was a bit like, okay, like you're older and what's going on? So then you start to feel like you're a freak and you're like, oh my gosh, there's nobody out there who's similar to me or has these experiences, and people might, and they just don't want to talk about it, or you just feel like an alien.
And I remember that people started asking if you were gay, as if that's a suggestion that someone who loses their virginity later, it might be because they're gay. Like, if people are gay or whatever sexuality they identify as, we're all going to lose our virginity when we lose our virginity.
Yes.
And I just remember that being
asexual. Asexual was one for a little bit, and I was like, you know what? I don't even know. Like, that was something that I even explored because I was so like not attuned to impulses. Like, I don't even think I understood what attraction was for a while. Like, I think I didn't really even understand how that worked. It just wasn't something that I had a lot of experience with. Yeah. So even I started to question. I was like, oh my God, maybe there's something wrong with me. But again, I didn't start to freak out about this till I felt the pressure from other people and how I was, I guess, moving in this world. Because I never felt it from my friends, like, and from you. I never felt any of that. It just really came from, oh, I'm now being received slightly differently from people that are now placing a judgment on me. And now I feel like I have to come up with like things to say, like, yeah, I'm, just haven't met anyone right. Or like, it's just, you sound so stupid. Like, you have to be putting an active effort to lose your virginity. You can't just be like, I'm a virgin and like, that's just what's up.
And did you feel different after?
No, I don't think so. I think I enjoyed telling all my friends.
Sure.
But in terms of like, because I love the attention. But no, I don't remember feeling different. I remember being like, now I can contribute to conversations that I couldn't contribute to before. I can also play Never Have I Ever now. Because those games are always about sex and I like never had anything to contribute. And I was like, okay, I can play this now. But no, I don't remember feeling any different. I remember just being like, I can now ask people for advice or say like, oh, is this normal? Or like, oh, what are you doing? Is this cool? But yeah, no, I felt like I could come to the table a little bit more with people, but not, I wouldn't say physically or personally I felt any different. Did you?
I just was so young. I just think I was like, great, that's done. But, as we were talking about in terms of as a woman, if you're older than society deems cool, as a virgin, you're considered pure, and as a man, you're considered weird.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I, from a young age, was already being called all the opposite words under the sun because I was a very sexual being. And I've always been open about it. Even when I was young, I just didn't care. I didn't care if someone could call me a slut, a whore, a sket. We've reclaimed sket. I love it. We've claimed it. It's happening.
It's the episode title.
And I'm proud. Yes, because all it really means is a promiscuous woman. And so what? I've just never cared. And even when I was 17, 18, I just wanted everyone to know it's okay. Nowadays, I'd like to think it's getting more progressive, but still I see things all the time about body count and why would you want a woman who's had sex with, and that people will say like 20 people and I'm like, gosh, well, I don't know what to tell you. But also it's people don't seem to understand basic science. You can have sex once with 100 different people. You can have sex 100 times with the same person and your vagina will remain the same. Obviously, it's mostly men that I see hitting up social media still, making very derogatory comments about what a female genitalia must be like if they've been promiscuous. But if you have a partner and you are having sex with them potentially every day, so you're having sex 365 times a year, or a woman is single and she's had sex with 100 people that year, you've still had sex with that vagina more than that person has with all these different people. But it still seems to be just a way to insult women. And I just think until men are willing to accept basic fact and science, it's just a way to still try and keep women in that place. It's all shame. Try and shame women into thinking they shouldn't be having so much sex. They shouldn't be having sex as much as men and penis owners. They shouldn't be being asexual. We're surrounded by shame.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is men and penis owners are portrayed as being hypersexualized beings, and women are sort of the afterthought in that. Mm-hmm. And I've only ever had one partner who has matched my sex drive. And I think people view a higher sex drive as a cool thing to have, or at least to say they have.
Yeah.
But I find having a high sex drive a problem.
No, we talked about this, and I actually thought it was really, I don't want to say enlightening, but I had never considered, because I like, as I touched on, I didn't have those experiences, attractions. I didn't have that language. I didn't feel that way. And I still wouldn't classify myself as having like a high sex drive. So to hear you speak about your experiences and like what actually goes into that, like I joke about it being a lot of admin, like a lot of things in your life are motivated or centered around this thing that you have to deal with every day. And I'm like, absolutely not something that I've ever had to think about.
For me, when people think that a high sex drive is the ideal, I'm like, you know what? Whatever your sex drive is, it is. But for me, and I think this is why I've never had a problem being like, I really don't care what you have to say about me and about my sexual partners and about my sexual past and my history. And I think that I've never cared because I'm so driven by sex. I don't think these people who've insulted me in the past understand how fundamental it is to my daily well-being. And if I wasn't, well, I spoke about it on National Orgasm Day. That's something that has to happen every day, whether it's alone, whether it's with a partner, because otherwise for me, my daily well-being and just general functioning is not good. It's not something that really is up for debate. So for anyone who thinks they could insult me for being a sexual being, I'm like, it's literally just who I am. I'm not insulted by you. It's to say you might as well just insult any other part of my character. I just don't care, because you're certainly not going to shame me into doing anything differently. I'm still going to go out and live my life like this because my sex drive is what it is, and I'm not going to feel bad about it, and neither should anyone out there, as long as everything you're doing is consensual. Like, I had one boyfriend, his sex drive was a lot lower than mine, and that just led him to say, you've got a sex addiction, I'm putting you in therapy. So he made me go to therapy. And really the issue was, we just weren't compatible. We just had completely incompatible sex drives. So instead of just addressing what that was and what that meant, he was like, I'm going to blame you. I'm going to tell you that there's something wrong with you and that you need to go and speak to a therapist because clearly you have an addiction.
Right.
And it's because we're taught that men and penis owners are supposed to be the sexualized beings, and women and vulva owners just sort of have to fall in line with what the men want to do.
Right. And it's about, like you're saying, it's the situation where a guy feels like he should be matching you. And if he isn't matching you, that's your fault. And if he didn't feel that pressure, none of this would matter. If there wasn't like a societal or deep-rooted thing telling you, no, you have to be the more dominant one. You have to want it more. You have to be either matching her or higher than her in this situation.
100%.
It's like such a fabricated issue, which is why it's so frustrating. It's like, are these your actual issues? Or are these issues put on you?
Well, they are. They are put on us. We're absolutely taught that because he just believed that he should have been able to provide. And instead of saying, hey, listen, I think that maybe I just have a much lower sex drive than you.
Yeah.
He was like, this is your fault and your problem. And I still think that we do live in a society where men in straight relationships think that way.
I completely agree. And also, I've heard people say that they're upset that their sex drive isn't the same as it was when they were younger. I mean, why are you putting that pressure on yourself? Like, you're not 17. You're at a different stage in your life. You've got different things going on, different commitments. Like, your body's different. Your brain is different. Like, I don't know why you're comparing yourself to like a past version of yourself that you're not. Like, why are you competing?
I think what's interesting is they're saying, I wish my sex drive was what it was then. But the only reason it isn't is because you don't want to have sex as much. So you know what I mean? That might sound, I don't know if I've worded that quite how I mean, but I just mean, if you don't want to have sex as much, that's fine.
It's society. Like you're saying, it's cool to have a high sex drive. It's not cool to be like, I'm not that bothered.
Right. And I always want to leave space for people who are in the asexual community, because there's no support for people who identify as asexual whatsoever. There's never a, hey, you should all be having sex all the time. But listen, if you don't feel like you ever want to have sex, that's fine. There's never that, it's totally cool if you don't have sexual feelings. There's no support for that whatsoever, and I hate that. Each person, whether they're a virgin or a sket, will come up against problems, and everything that we deal with, we think we're alone.
Exactly.
Whereas actually we're in a huge amount of company, and anything that anyone is dealing with, I'm hoping someone will be on this podcast to be like, hey, listen, me too, because I just want everyone to know that they aren't alone.
They're not alone, and you should have a space to speak about this. But we don't, I mean, I didn't have a space like this growing up. There were no podcasts about sex or like people that I knew and respected talking about this kind of stuff. It was very much like you figure it out on your own, you and your friends figure it out.
Well, right, because we don't have good sex education, so really you do just have to figure it out, and then your main resource is like films and maybe porn. And then we're taught that sex ends with the male orgasm. That's where it ends, because that's how it ends in a movie. That's how a woman's getting her pleasure, and that's also where sex ends. And it's not where sex ends. Of course, sometimes it can, but that's not the be-all and end-all of sex, but that's what we learn, and that's how we're taught. So how are we to know otherwise? And so even, I guess actually that leads me on to an interesting question for you, which I hadn't even thought about, but is that how losing your virginity ended for you?
No, I think it was very much like this is your first time, so it's going to be about you. That was more of what that experience was for me. It was less about him and was more about, let's make sure you enjoy this because like we can figure out me later. But again, like I didn't know. So I was like, okay, we'll just are along for the ride. Like, the thing is, I had no idea. If someone had just gone, this is what we're going to do, let's go, this is what's going to happen, I just would have followed suit because I wouldn't have known any different. And I wouldn't have known how to communicate what I wanted or what I wanted to happen. So I definitely got led through that very nicely, shall we say.
I mean, I can only hope that anyone out there who is listening, who may be in a similar situation to you,
gets this experience,
gets the same treatment.
Completely agree. I also think if I could give anyone, I'm not going to like start imparting wisdom or advice to anyone, but like don't feel like it has to be your entire identity. Don't make it the most, or what you perceive to be the most interesting thing about you. Like, you know, when you have a spot on your face and you're like, everyone can see the spot, so I'm just going to talk about it before anyone can say anything. It's like that, but like no one can tell you're a virgin, right? So you're like, I'm like, if you just don't go into every situation and go, I can't possibly just be my authentic self, I have to kind of put a caveat on that and be like, everyone needs to know this because this is exactly who I am and that's the kind of singular most interesting thing or most important thing about me. Yeah. And I just feel like that's just such an insane amount of pressure to put on yourself. And no wonder like it was difficult for me to date because I was like this thing hanging over my head of like, I'm going to have this conversation or like this guy's going to think I'm a freak. And that's just an insane way to live. So if anyone's experiencing that, just please take the pressure off yourself, please.
And how have you found your sexual journey since?
I mean, I've only had sex in relationships, which is just how it's worked out for me. But I do remember saying to you, oh, I kind of wish that I had, like, slept with more people. I think there was part of me that was then feeling like, oh, God, everyone else has all of these stories, and, like, I only have, like, these two people to talk about. Like, so you never win. I was like, so I wasn't winning when I was a virgin, and now I've had sex, and I'm still, like, the bottom of the heap here. I have, like, nothing to contribute.
But there's no winning. There's no winning. We've all just got our own journey.
Exactly. It was definitely interesting doing it later in life because I feel like, you know, new to this, but I'm also like coming at it with like a slightly, through years of therapy, more enhanced set of tools. I know what it's like to have really fulfilling relationships. So, you know, I know how to communicate with my friends. So hopefully that can translate into this area. Maybe you're like, you still feel like a newcomer in terms of like sex
actually
itself.
doing it.
Yeah. But in terms of everything around it, like I don't remember how I handled it or whatever, but I would hope that I came to the situation with like more of an emotional awareness of this is what's going to happen. I'm not going to freak out if like, you know, things don't work out between us. And I'm not saying that that's what happens for people when they're younger, but I was like, I'm not basing all of my hopes and dreams on this one person.
Yeah.
If this experience isn't everything it's cracked up to be, I'm not going, oh my God, but I've waited for so long. It has to be like the most amazing thing. It's like, no, actually, like this is something that I want to do. That's all I need to approach the situation with. And I don't need to put as much pressure on it. I mean, I was so insecure as a teenager. So I feel like it just would have been horrible if I had done it at 14, 15. I feel like I just would have been so like, don't look at me, insecure lights. Like none of that would have happened. So I think there was something nice about like waiting until I was a little bit more sure of myself. I do think that there are some advantages to waiting.
You spoke earlier about body image, and that's another thing we're sort of going to touch on. How, obviously I know you spoke about when you were younger being bigger and how that contributed to all of that, but how, is that something that ever creeps into your sex life now? Like, how do you feel?
Oh, I feel like there's definitely elements of like not wanting to be seen. I always feel kind of insecure about my body, not all the time, but I feel like that definitely creeps in where you're like, oh, I don't look, or I'm not feeling at my best, I don't feel attractive, and just not having the tools to handle that, because I was like, I've only been having sex for 5 years, and I've been struggling with body images since I was, 12? So that's like, you know, I'm dealing with a lot of like those recurring issues that I'm now trying to figure out in this arena. So that's going to take some time, but it's just things that creep back in where you're like, I shouldn't be naked, I should be wearing a shirt, like the lights should always be off, like just little things that creep in, like how can I make myself more attractive to this other person? And it's always hiding yourself. It's always like making yourself smaller or not seen if the lights are off.
Because we do live in a more body positive sort of space in terms of there's a lot more body diversity on social media now in terms of trying to make it a more inclusive space. Mm-hmm. Have you found that that's had an effect on your sort of mindset of the whole thing rather than, because I mean, we did live in a world for a long time where all we saw was size zeros everywhere, and there was just no escape from it. And I do think that people are trying to promote healthier body image and like a more inclusive space for all bodies. And do you think that that's had any effect on how you feel? Do you think that's helped, or do you think really it's just a personal thing, so it doesn't really make any difference?
No, I think it's really inspiring to see more stories, because I feel like I only had 1 or 2 stories around me where I was like, that person's bigger, they're in a bigger body, that's just how they move in this world, and they're still having like an amazing dating and sex life, and they're out there living, but that was a rarity for me to see. So I think with social media, I'm happy to see more examples of that. And that, because for me, it was like, that's great for her, but she's the one out of like 1,000 of my friends who are bigger that can do that. So I want more of those stories. So I think social media has allowed me to see more of that. You know, there's a very big difference between like, I feel fat. We've talked about this. I feel fat and I actually am fat, or you know, as a descriptor, versus something that's just how I feel. Someone who's suffering from actual like medical bias, or, you know, fat phobia in other arenas, like that is an actual issue. Like they are actually fat. But someone who, like for me, who was fat, who now isn't, I can't just turn around and be like, but I'm fat now, so I have all the same issues. Like I don't move in this world as I used to. So then I now have, like, I still have like kind of hangovers and like that stuff creeps in, but I'm not presenting as that to the world. And I have to own that now. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I mean, to be fair, I mean, I am a body confident person. Not body confident, I just don't really care. I don't put much thought into it. My body does what it does. I also understand, listen, I sit in a naturally petite frame, so I am on the right side of society when it comes to that stuff. So I acknowledge that that's a privilege, but women tear themselves apart no matter what. But interestingly, I'm not a very naked person during sex. I always like to have something on, and it's not because I don't want to be naked. I just like it. For me, I find that sexy, even if it's like a little slip or a bra or like a crotchless pant. I just like having things on. And I think, you know, for me, I think people feel like they have to be naked, and I think for some people that makes them feel more vulnerable, or for some people that makes them view things as more intimate. But actually, to be completely transparent, for me, I prefer not to be, and that's just a preference, just because I like a little bit of clothing hanging off because I find it sexy.
That's great.
Like, so if anyone else out there feels like because they want to keep something on during sex that makes them less confident, or might feel weird, or that it's not normal, like, you need to do what works for you in a sexual environment to make you feel at your best, because that's how you're going to have your best sex.
Yeah. And I remember like my therapist and you guys saying, you know, if you're so in your head, like you're never going to have a good time. Like if you're so like, and also you're with someone else or multiple people who all have their own inner dialogue going on. So like no one is spending as much time on your perceived flaws and insecurities as you are, right? Like, because you are the center of your world. So you're the main character. Everything's about you. Yeah. That's generally not happening in that situation. They've got their own stuff going on, right? They have their own inner monologue, their own potential insecurities. No one is looking at you and going, oh, I really don't like her lower abs, so I'm now not interested in like this experience anymore.
I tend to very much come from the attitude of, if I'm with someone and you're having a consensual, amazing time, I'm like, listen, whatever my body is doing, like, lucky you because you're here with me, but also lucky me because I'm here with you. I'm not like, lucky you to be here with me.
No, that's amazing.
It's a mutual thing. I'm like, lucky you that you're having this experience with me, and lucky me that I'm having this experience with you. And all of that other stuff just doesn't matter, because really, if that other person is focusing on something that might be perceived as a flaw in that moment, then you're not really in that moment anyway.
Exactly. You've taken yourself out of it because you're not thinking, like you're saying, the collaboration. You're now not thinking about that person, the experience. You're just thinking about yourself.
You're not fully invested in having a good time with each other, because bodies are amazing, exploration is amazing, sex is amazing, like all of that stuff is really cool. So if we're like in our heads and thinking about something completely unrelated, then we're not really in the moment anyway.
Completely agree. I completely agree. And I feel like the reason that I think it's important for us to talk about body image in this particular podcast episode is because that was a huge thing for me where I couldn't separate the two. Like I didn't know if my body issues, which were so bad as a teenager, was the reason, or the singular reason, that I wasn't able to kind of understand what I wanted, what like my journey was going to be, like what I wanted to happen. And I feel like that does affect a lot of people. And it doesn't have to be weight. Like weight was my experience. It can be anything. It can be like not feeling like you're, perceived as attractive. If you're, if you're smaller, you can still feel those things. If you're, lanky, whatever it is, like everyone's got a plethora of insecurities, right? Especially now with social media. If you're not good at X, Y, or Z, you can still have that, and that can still motivate or dissuade you from trying to explore these things. And I think for me, it did. And some people, I guess, can navigate those things with grace. I didn't. I was so confused. I was like, is the reason that I'm not able to find anyone that I wanted to have sex with, is that because it's me? Is it them? Is it a combination? Is it the fact that they don't find me attractive, so I'm not being put in a situation where I even have to make that decision? Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's something that maybe, I don't know if I can't speak for everyone, but if there are people who are like me and had waited a longer time, once you get into your 20s, you're like, oh my God, I've lived enough of life. Where are these experiences? Maybe they're never going to happen. I really, really empathize with everyone that feels like they're doing something wrong. Because that's such a horrible way to feel.
But I think everyone's attitude towards everything sexual, because we haven't been brought up to have open and very transparent conversations about it in the same way that we would about pretty much any other topic. Everyone's attitude is things are wrong. Mm-hmm. They are alone in dealing with things, that something they are feeling is shameful, that something they are thinking is embarrassing, that something they are thinking is just not normal. None of these things are true. Yeah. Everything we all go through, whatever that is, the thing is, there's no normal. So it means that really everything is normal, because there isn't a normal. There's no normal when it comes to this. There's no normal anything when it comes to this. And I watched a documentary called The Principles of Pleasure, and I would recommend anyone to watch it. And an amazing doctor on it said, if you want to fuck your partner's armpit, go and fuck your partner's armpit. And do it. There's no normal. There really isn't, because what feels good for one person might feel completely awful for someone else. And that's why I sort of wanted to touch on language, because we also come from such a place of viewing sex as good or bad.
Yeah.
And I really, really want to work to change that, because I don't think there is a good or bad. I think there is what works for us and what doesn't. So I have had sexual experiences that have been less than pleasurable for me. And in my younger years, I might have said they were bad in bed. And I hate that. I hate that I did that. I hate that that was the language I was using. I hate the thought that that is the language that other people use about each other. Because I also don't go into any sexual experience worrying about whether someone is going to say they think I'm good or bad in bed, because I just don't. That's not how I view it. It's either going to work or it isn't. You're compatible or you're not. You're going to communicate and make it work, or you're not.
Yeah.
And what didn't feel good for me might blow someone else's mind. It might be the best sex I've ever had. I've had the same sexual partners as other people that I've known, and we've had completely different experiences because we're two completely different bodies.
Right.
So we have two completely different experiences with that same person because different things work for us. So when we talk about language and all of those things and good or bad, or how we think we're going to be viewed and this, that, or the other, and when you say you worry that whether something wasn't normal or whether you were on your own in thinking that, I just want to try and open everything up to just being, it is what it is.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because then I think there's so much shame attached to that, right?
It's all shame and fear. All shame and fear. Because you're so worried about whether someone's going to think you're good or bad in bed or look a certain way or this or the other, that you can't fully let yourself go and enjoy the experience of what it is anyway.
Yeah.
I think there are so many people out there who are holding back sexually because of body image issues. In whatever capacity that means, whatever that means. And I really just want to start removing the shame from all of it. And I just want people to feel open to live as they feel they deserve, because they do deserve. Everyone is deserving of pleasure and everyone is deserving of living their best sexual lives, I guess we can say, as the TikTokers probably would.
Yep.
So, I mean, you're another language person.
Love language.
Everything is language. Everything is communication. And you can communicate your way through body image issues.
Absolutely.
I mean, you obviously have a partner now. Do you feel that is something that you would feel able to communicate about to them?
Oh, absolutely. But also because it's such a huge part of me and my day to day.
Sure.
Because I feel like once you've lived with something for so long, it's so ingrained in your language. Like I'll catch myself saying things and I'm like, God, I wish I like didn't still think that way. Or I wish I still didn't like say such negative things about myself or how I view myself. It's something that's just, it's motivated me for so long that if anyone wants to be with me or know me, they'll have to know that like this comes from like, you know, it's as simple as things like I have issues with like food and like choosing the right thing, or again, right, what is right, choosing the thing that my body actually wants versus like what I tell it that it wants and it doesn't. So, you know, I struggle with meal times a lot because there's things like I'm always on a diet. So like I'll be eating something completely different to like either the people at the table or my partner. And that's just, you know, that's like a very practical level. But then, you know, insecurities about what I'm wearing or trying to feel attractive, or in some ways, like really enjoying, let's say like random attention from someone who doesn't matter for like a minute or so. And then just being like, oh, I wonder why I'm really like reveling in this. And it's because it's something that I'm really not used to. And I'm still looking for evidence that I'm attractive because that's just not something that I think that I am. So if I get that response from someone, that immediately becomes like more of a priority than whatever else is happening. So if I'm at like an event with my partner and someone else is giving me a compliment, like my attention's on that person, right?
Sure.
So that's something that like, I obviously don't want to make my partner feel uncomfortable, but I'm like, you know me well enough to know that like, this is something I struggle with and I'm looking to kind of retrain my brain, and I'm maybe geared to place more importance on this than maybe you would if you just had a better self-image. But it permeates to like all your relationships because you just don't feel worthy. So you're like comparing yourself where there is no comparison. Like no one else was comparing themselves to me. It was all me. Right. And whether that came from like, you know, media or other influences like culture or family, whatever, I was definitely doing the bulk of that work. Like that didn't come from, no one was ever going like, Dev, don't wear that. Or like, should you eat that? Or like, you know, no one was ever saying, it was all me.
I mean, funnily enough, when I went through my marriage breakdown, which I'll talk about in a later episode, and I lost a bunch of weight and was down to about 6.5 stone, I'd never felt less sexy. And I was surrounded by people going, oh my God, like, how are you so thin? And oh my God. And I wanted to be like, because most days I feel like I want to die. That's how I'm so thin, because I'm relentlessly stressed. And it completely destroyed my sex drive. And other people seemed to want to be thin because then they thought they'd be confident to just go out there and hook up with anyone. And I was just the furthest from myself in that respect. It's the least sexy I've ever. Oh my gosh,
it's such a good point, because I remember I have like several female friends who we've like all been struggling with our weight for our entire lives. And we've even said to each other, like, when you were at your thinnest, were you happy? Like, did you feel sexy? Did you feel confident when you were like objectively at your smallest size? And the answer is never yes. It's never like, yeah, I got to like this weight and then my life got better and I was, you know, I felt so sexy and like all the men wanted me and like all of that stuff, right? Like it's never that. It's just like an arbitrary thing that we've decided that, you know, we need to keep striving for, because when you're thinner, you're better. And then when you're better,
it's all targeted at the male gaze anyway.
Yeah.
Which is just not what we want. We want to move away from that and just start feeling good for ourselves. And if we take the thought of anyone else's gaze out of that, what we actually like look in the mirror and love ourselves for might be completely different than when we're looking at ourselves thinking about how someone else is going to look at us.
I completely agree.
And when you completely remove that and you just look in the mirror and what anyone else might think becomes completely irrelevant, you might be like, hell yeah. I always think I just don't want people to value me for my appearance anyway. So I always try to, I don't really look in the mirror that often, but I try to, when I do, go, hell yeah, because you know what? You're an intelligent, funny gal. And so whatever else happens is a secondary product. And you're sexy. We're going to have a sexy time. It's going to be fine.
That's great. Can we
but
get
I
like
love
pep
a little
talks?
pep talk for myself.
Yeah. I think you should record a whole session of them and people get play them like right before stuff's happening. They'll just be like, okay, like peach number 1, pep talk, mirror.
Like, listen, for me, if I'm having sex with someone or I'm having a sexual experience with someone, I'm invested and I'm very invested in them, and I'm invested in paying attention to them and listening to them and their responses. And like, I love that. So, you know, I love that whole part of a sexual experience. So I'm never really thinking about anything else. And I think like when you can turn your attention to like that being the priority, I'm hoping for anyone who does suffer from body image or any other issues like that, when you make being present in that sexual moment the priority,
Yes.
that hopefully that other stuff will sort of dissipate and just not be that important anymore.
Absolutely. And honestly, like, I don't even think if I could just have ignored all of the external pressure, I really don't think I would have been bothered. I don't think I tied it in with my weight or my self-image. That would not, like, that would have never occurred. So I feel like it came from all of these external influences. And if I could just look back and be like, God, I wish I could just like help that person out and be like, just take the pressure off. Don't feel like you have to jump to the end.
This is good because it's going to lead us on to our questions that we had sent in. So we've got a few. Also, I did find out today that Gen Z is apparently having less sex than any generation before, but I think we're maybe looking at attributing that to lockdown, but
not being able to leave the house.
And millennials are losing their virginity much later than their parents. I hope that doesn't pertain to me. I don't want to think about that because that's concerning. I felt like I was very young. Okay, so the questions that people have sent in today for this episode, knowing what we were going to be speaking about. So obviously these were sent in via my Not Gonna Lie anonymous link. So we don't know who they're from, but hopefully if you are listening, you'll hear this question read out and you will hear an answer. But I mean, I think we've probably touched on it really already, but I'm going to read the first two because they're kind of similar and then we can probably sort of put the answer into one and I think it will cover both. So the first question is, 27 years old. I haven't had sex yet, but I want to start exploring sexual experiences. I'm not sure how to vocalize to partners to be that I've never had sex. Any advice on navigating those conversations? So that's one question. And then the second one is, any advice for a 32-year-old virgin who doesn't want that to be the case anymore? So,
and this is where it goes back to, I don't know if you should have to disclose that if you don't want to.
The thing is, I didn't ever have those conversations.
Yeah. If you want to be open about it, be open about it. If it's something that you're like, this is important to me, it's important to me that whoever I sleep with knows, then I think just being transparent about it and also not feeling like you have anything to apologize for. I feel like if you go into it with an apologetic energy of, oh my God, like I like you, but you know, I'm a virgin and I'm sorry. Whereas like it has nothing to do with them. That's entirely your experience. So just maybe not approaching it with giving it so much weight. It doesn't have to have that. It can just be something as simple as like, you know, I'm interested in taking this further. It's important for you to know this, but I'm not. And then just kind of, I guess, laying out expectations because, you know, that could mean so much for so many different people. Being a virgin saying, but I want to sleep with you could mean, and I want you to be my first and I want it to go a certain way. Or it could be like, I want to do it within the confines of a relationship. Or it could be like, I want to explore this and I want you to know this because I'm feeling insecure and I want you to be prepared. So like, as long as you're getting across what you want them to know before you're entering into this experience, I think just being as transparent as possible is what I would advise.
I agree with that. People shouldn't have to disclose anything they don't want to, but at the same time, my view on life is that open, transparent communication is key to everything. Because I just think that when everyone knows where they stand, we can all forge a path forward. Whatever that means. Sometimes everyone knowing where they stand is not a great thing because sometimes we don't like where the other person might stand. In the same way that when those people said to you, I don't want to have that pressure on me to be your first time. And that wasn't great, but it was an open and honest communication. And then you knew where you stood. So you could forge a path forward. You're not going to have sex with that person. Yeah. And so that's what I mean by open, transparent communication is I think when everyone knows the situation, then we can all move forward with 100% truth.
No, I completely agree. I think
honesty.
I was saying for those two people, like if one of them, I think sounded like they wanted to say it and the other one, I guess it wasn't clear. So I think I was just saying like, make sure, you know, you do what feels right to you. And
I completely agree. I do completely agree because listen, I think if someone says, hey, what's your body count? You're also well within your rights to say it's absolutely none of your business.
1,000%.
And I think at the end of the day, I want people to do what they want to do and what makes them feel comfortable. I think the thought of being always open and transparent is really overwhelming, but quite often out the other side of it, you feel much better because there's nothing weighing on you and you're like, well...
There are no surprises, yeah.
That's how it is. That's the situation. That's the truth. And there we go. We're going to do with that what we will.
And I think you've touched on exactly like if you do get an answer back that you maybe weren't anticipating or aren't happy about, I think like what we've tried to touch on here today is that's not about you. That's coming from their experiences. So if you don't hear like, you know, the perfect answer that you were expecting and it's someone being, you know, like we're saying, feeling the pressure, feeling any kind of certain way, that's not about you. That's their experience. And you have to, like you're saying, respect that as much as your side.
And I'm also a massive advocate for masturbation. I love it. So I would absolutely, if you don't already, again, I don't know the specifics, but if you haven't or don't already, I would absolutely recommend a period of self-exploration in that respect, because then you're going to go into a sexual experience with someone, even though you might not have had penetrative sex with someone yet. You're going to go into a sexual experience with someone more confident because you're going to be in touch with what you like. Mm-hmm. You're going to be in touch already with what feels good for you. So even if someone feels a little nervous to be having sex with a virgin because, again, societal pressure, they're going to be going into an experience with someone who might be able to say, hey, actually, like, this is what feels good, or this is what I like, because you've already taken some time with yourself to figure that out. Like, I really can't recommend masturbation more.
I love how passionate you are right now.
Well, I love it, and I find it very easy to communicate to sexual partners what I like and what I want, because I know, because I've done it to myself. So I know, and I really recommend that. And I think if you are in your 20s, in your 30s, and you are looking to sort of start having those sexual experiences, it is going to feel nerve-wracking if you really have no idea what you're going into and you've just been surrounded by all this information forever. But if you've taken some time to figure yourself out a bit, whether that's just manually or with a toy, you know, there's such a huge plethora of toys out there for all genders to use. And I think that if you're already in touch with, if you're a female or a vulva owner, even if you've maybe used a toy that is for clitoral stimulation, and then you know that works for you, you're going into a sexual experience and you've already got that information to hand. So you already know what you can advise. You already know what direction you can point someone in if they're a bit like, oh my God, especially if that person is, because of the nonsense, thinking, oh my gosh, this person's a virgin. I'm really nervous about getting this right. Again, there's no right or wrong, but it's what we're ingrained to think. I'm really nervous about getting this right for them. You're in a position of saying, hey, don't worry, because this is what feels good. So put your hand there, put your tongue there, put your mouth there, put your whatever there, fuck my armpit if you want, you know, all of that stuff.
Yes.
You might have already figured out little tiny things that feel good. Like, I'm obsessed with having my neck kissed. It drives me mad. If someone's kissing or biting my neck, I'm going to lose my mind. Now
Top tip for everyone there.
now everyone knows. But it's like, it's a sure thing. We're on the, you know, we're going.
On the train.
We're on the train. We're on the train. We're not getting off. I always make jokes on my social media about being called good girl. Drives me mad. Don't know why. What's the logic behind that? I don't know. But I know that it is what it is.
I think it's the convent. It's the convent.
It's the convent. It is. You joke, but it probably is. Coming back from the convent, good girl. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, well, that's game over. It's game over.
But no, do you know, you've actually touched on a really good point. You are, if you're having sex with someone, you're, you know, one person in this situation, you're 50% of that. So
exactly.
Like, even if you're a virgin and you think you have no idea what's going on, you are 50, like, you are just as much entitled to have a good time than that other person. It's not like you unlock the level where you're like, I have to sleep with like 5 people and then I'm allowed to enjoy sex.
Well, it's that whole like idea of that we're giving a gift to someone, and that's just not the case. And I recommend that to everyone, even people with partners who are in long-term relationships. I'm like, always take time out to explore yourself more, because then you're going to always be bringing something new into your relationships, because you're like, hang on, like I actually just like touched myself here and that felt really good, so can now you try doing that to me? You know what I mean? Like, there's always more self-exploration to be done, because I am never nervous to go into a sexual experience with anyone, because I'm like, well, failing anything else, I know what I like. So I know, I obviously go in open-minded to every experience, so I never know what someone's going to bring to the table. But failing anything else, I can say, hey, do this. And I know, listen, if you're going to kiss and bite my neck and call me a good girl, we're on the right train. So,
oh my God, I feel like there's a whole like, no, I'm not gonna go. I was gonna say asking you about confession. There's something in there.
Listen, it is what it is. But so be open and transparent if you want. Don't feel like you have to disclose it. Don't make it the most important thing.
Yes.
And whatever gender, sexuality you are, I recommend some self-exploration just to build your confidence before you go into those experiences. So I hope that has answered the question. If not, feel free to let me know that we haven't even that 20-minute answer. Please feel free to write back to the anonymous link and tell us that we did a terrible job. But that would be mine and Dev's recommendation.
Yes.
Okay, so do you think that virginity is made too much of a big deal, or do you believe it is a rite of passage? We've touched on this already, but I'm gonna bounce it back to you to just sum it up.
I mean, do I think it's a rite of... Okay, well, there's two questions there. Is it a big deal? It's definitely made a huge deal out of.
Yeah.
And it's also
I agree.
been used to mock, or I guess, well, like, and it goes back to, like, I was thinking about the Friends episode where, if you're familiar with it, everyone, where they do the one that could have been, where Monica is still fat and she for some reason has to still be a virgin because she's fat. Yeah. And I remember being like, why are those two things so, like, intertwined? Like, why is it that because she's still fat, obviously she could never have had sex, like, that wouldn't have happened for her as this still fat person. So, like, we've been bombarded with this image of what this should be. So I definitely think that there is way too much put onto the idea of the virgin, so that when someone does disclose, oh, this is just how, my life has turned out, you immediately attach it to all of those things. So 100%, I would agree. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's what I would.
It is made far too much of a big deal. I completely agree. I mean, to be fair, like, I talk about mine casually and we were kind of like, let's just get it out the way. But that still came from a place of being like, fuck, like, this is kind of maybe a scary thing. Let's just get it out the way.
Yes.
No sensitivity.
Pretense, yeah.
Like, it was very much just get it in and out and then it's done. I think there's different pressures put on women and men when it comes to virginity.
Yes.
But I do think that it is made too much of a big deal.
And also, we're not, I mean, not to bring it back to cultural stuff, but we're not really out of the woods yet with things like, I don't know how recent this has happened, but I definitely have experiences where I knew there was a girl in my year in school whose father took her to get her virginity checked. Like, that was happening in my era. Oh my God,
How do you get someone's virginity checked?
It's a whole thing. Seriously, Google it. There are doctors that, like, would do this. I'm hoping that this still doesn't happen because, I mean, I haven't kept up with whether or not this is, but they would do virginity checks.
But what
to check if your hymen's still intact. And it was about, like, the notion that, you're only good and pure and, respectful in this particular community if you were still a virgin. So parents would check.
That is absolutely horrifying.
Yeah. And that's not, I mean, I'm talking like 12 years ago that this was happening to people that I knew. So I'm not even sure how that's played out since then.
I'm going to look into this and get this shut down because we won't be doing that. I mean, listen, it is made too much of a big deal, but I will also say this. You are all entitled to lose your virginity however you wish. I mean, our experiences couldn't have been more opposite.
Totally.
But they're both fine. You
and
are
valid.
welcome to go and valid. You are welcome to go and lose your virginity however you wish.
It does not have to be how mine was, just how it worked out. Like, I would never look at someone who went, do you know what? I just one night was like, I just want to do this tonight and I really don't care who it's with and I don't want to attach a lot of significance to it. I just want to do this. No judgment. Absolutely. That is completely your call if it's between two consenting people. Go for it.
It's not going to define your sex life for the rest of your life. It's just one time. It might be one time with one person you continue having sex with. It might be one time, one person, and that's that, never again. You know what I mean? It's just one time in all of the times you're going to have sex in your life.
And I guess what we're saying is, if you think it's a rite of passage, power to you. If you're also like, I don't think it is, I don't want it to be, completely fine too. We back you.
So I guess there isn't really an answer to that question because it's kind of whatever you want to do is fine. That's really just sums up my entire attitude towards sex in general. Okay, so last question. I think I make bad sex choices because I have body image problems, thoughts, and advice.
I mean, I guess I would be curious as to what the bad choices are. Like, are they disingenuous? Like, do you want to be doing the things that you're doing? Like, are they bad?
I agree. Yeah. I'm not really sure what that means in terms of bad sex choices. Because sometimes when people are insecure, they look for sexual attention for validation. Is that what this means?
I mean, that's how I read it. But again, like, why are you placing that judgment on it? Unless you didn't want to do those things.
Right, and that's my concern is sometimes, and I have friends who have, listen, I've also looked back and been like, did I really want to have sex with that person that time? Probably not. They had my consent at the time, so that's not me saying it was anything other than what it was. But when I look back, I'm like, But anyway, so if that is what this is, and it's coming from a place of because I feel bad about myself, I look to sexual attention to make myself feel better, and therefore I am having sex with those people and making those choices because because it helps. I would just say that before you have a sexual experience with someone, really and truly deeply tap into, do I really want to be here? Do I really want to, how, and also if you know it doesn't make you feel good after, then you have that as a point of reference. So now you're in a position to think, do I want to be here with this person? Do I really want to have sex with them? And how is this going to make me feel after? And I think almost give yourself a set of questions to ask yourself, because communicating with yourself is just as important as communicating with another person. You have to have those conversations and be honest with yourself. Do I really want to consent to having sex with this person or doing whatever you're doing with that person in that moment? And how is it going to make me feel tomorrow? Because I think to be sending the question in, it's obviously something that isn't ending up being a positive experience. Because if you were having a great time and it wasn't a problem, I guess you wouldn't be asking the question. So those would be my thoughts. And also, if you have body image problems, obviously as a completely separate thing, definitely look into talking to someone about that. Like I'm studying to be a therapist, so I'm a huge advocate for therapy. But I think if you have body image problems, definitely look to talk to someone about that. Therapy can also be expensive and not always accessible. So at least try and have open, honest conversations about that with people that you feel supported by, who can sort of speak with you openly about why that might be and why that might be leading you to make choices based from a place of insecurity. Dev, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, and I would say also just don't spend so much, I mean, the language, there's just so much shame there and like guilt that I'm feeling from that question.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm like, if there's any way that you can say, okay, that was what that experience was, but I'm gonna just let that be what it was and not keep dwelling on the fact that like maybe that wasn't, like you're saying, because you can look at a situation and go, oh, okay, maybe I didn't want to do that in hindsight, or that wasn't my favorite experience, that didn't need to happen. But you're not sitting there going, and now I'm going to let that influence how I make any future decisions. So I'm just like, basically just be kind to yourself. Like
I
really,
agree.
really like, and I'm terrible at this, so I don't practice what I preach here a lot, but try to like change the self-talk of like, I make bad decisions, I do this because I'm insecure. It's like, you were making a choice at the time, it happened. How do we move forward from that? How do we not live in that space and just keep perpetuating this vicious cycle of like, I deserve this, so I'm going to make this happen?
As long as things were consensual, which is always, for me, the most important thing. I completely agree. It's hard to move into a more positive sexual headspace. I think if you've had some negative experiences, I can hear the blame in the question because I think I make bad sex choices. But again, as we said, it's a collaboration. You're always in that with someone else. So don't put the blame on yourself. Like, take that away. And these experiences have happened. I think that the best thing really that can be done is to look into your thoughts on your body image and hopefully start to have a more neutral or positive outlook on how you feel about yourself. I want you to feel good about yourself. I want everyone to feel good about themselves because we have good experiences when we feel good. But I would say maybe look into feeling better before moving into more sexual experiences if you are coming out of them feeling negative.
And on a side note to that, don't feel like if you have slept with someone that then means that they're entitled to get that from you if you no longer want that to happen.
Absolutely.
Because I have seen so many experiences where someone's gone, why is this person hitting on me or trying to make this happen when I've made it clear that I don't want that? And I would say it's because they think that you want to have sex with them again because you have had sex with them once. And so to them, you're someone who's fair game. And that's not how it should be. But I'm like, unfortunately, that's, I guess, how some people operate, where they think that if they've had sex with someone once, then they're entitled to it over and over again until someone comes along and goes, actually, no, that's not what I want to do anymore. So just know that if you're unhappy or like not unhappy, if you don't want that experience to happen again, it absolutely does not. You have not given up your right to say no. You can withdraw consent even after you've had sex with, like, as in future situations.
100%. I mean, you can withdraw because you can be in that moment and you can say, you know what, I am not feeling this anymore, and they have no right to continue. You've got your right to your own consent at any given time. You don't owe anything to anyone. So I completely agree. And I do agree that people sometimes feel entitled to it, and that is not what we want.
And the reason I mention that is also because with the body image stuff, I know there's an element of like, oh, someone's giving me attention. Like, this is the only person that will ever give me attention. Or you should be grateful for that experience.
Right, okay.
As opposed to going, oh, okay, I actually am allowed to say no to this. It's basically being told, or your self-talk is telling you no, like I need to say yes because what if this never comes around again? So just cut that out. Stop that.
Absolutely cut that out. We are all deserving of pleasure and good sex, no matter what shape, size, gender, sexuality, anything. You're deserving of good sex. Well, Dev, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
For coming on today and for being so open. If you want to drop your social media.
Okay, so it's my Twitter, my Instagram is my full name. So it's at Devika, Devika Joshi. And you can write to me anytime. I'm happy to answer any questions. And also, Peach, thank you for creating this podcast because I feel like this is going to help so many people and I'm honored to be your first guest.
So, there you have it, from the Virgin and the Sket ourselves. I am so very grateful to Dev for her openness and honesty today, and can only hope that it helps anyone who may find themselves in a similar situation. Even today, virginity can still be the subject of mocking and insensitive jokes in a lot of the media we consume. And the fact is, it's a very real thing we will all face in one way or another at some point. And so I truly hope Dev's story and honesty can encourage people to have conversations and let each other know that however they chose or choose to begin their sexual journey is absolutely fine and deserving of support. I'll be back next week to discuss sexual fears and all of those things that may be holding us back from feeling fully liberated in our sex lives. So hopefully I'll see you back here for that next Wednesday. Thanks for coming. Thank you for tuning in to Sex on the Peach today, and I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find and follow me on Instagram, YouTube and TikTok at Sex on the Peach Cast, and you can also get in touch with me at sexonthepeachcast@gmail.com. Please do continue to like, share, subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you next week. Love.